In your long experience as a monk, seeing Westerners come and go, picking up the practice of Buddhism, have you noticed any general cultural conditioning which makes it more difficult?
More like on the michality or understanding of Buddhism.
Yeah, wrong understanding. When a person takes up something like Buddhism, they get lots of new words, they got new concepts, and they have to fit these in somehow. Now, when people take in something that they haven't met before, find something familiar, and then they assume that that familiar thing equates with this in Buddhism. And it often takes a long time for them to change their minds, if they ever do. But some people, they get the idea that Buddhism, it's the same as this, or it's the same as that, in Christian terms, or Judaic terms, like that. They think like that, but it's not the case. The things in Buddhism they have to be taken on the levels of Buddhism and the Buddhist teaching. You can't really take them on the levels of any other teaching or anything of that sort. If one does, one gets vichaditi, wrong view. You can say, basically, the right view of the Buddhist teaching is the Four Noble Truths. In other words, the fundamental thing is dukkha, the discontent, suffering. This is the fundamental thing and the fundamental cause. It's why we all search. And the second thing is the cause of that. The cause of the discontent. What is the thing that brings it about? That's the tanha, craving, wanting. This is the thing. And realizing that, it's possible to say that the cessation of this discontent can come about by the cessation of the cause, which is the reverse of the first two factors. And when the cessation of the cause is brought about by the Eightfold Path, then the result comes out as the cessation of dukkha. This is the fundamental right view in Buddhism. Tanshan Man was asked once, how do you tell a system is Buddhist? And he said, if it teaches the Four Noble Truths, it's Buddhist.
When you went to Bangkok, how you approached the practice and what was your focus, what was the things that you tried to develop?
When I went to Bangkok, I had been doing the practice of Anapanasati quite a lot. But really I have to go back more to shortly after I was ordained. And I started off using the Sama Arahang practice of Wat Pak Nam. And some of you may not know it. You put your attention at the nose first of all, and you repeat the word Sama Arahang like that 3 times. Then you go to the eye, then you go to the middle of the head, each time Sama Arahang. And then the throat here, 2 places there, to the navel, and then you come up just about 2 fingers breadth above that, to a point here, roughly solar plexus. And you keep your attention on that, internally. And you have to keep your attention on that until you get a light nimitta arising. Well, I didn't get light nimittas. It didn't work that way with me at all. But what it did do, which was very valuable, was it brought understanding of the area down here, down in the abdomen. And it seems to me that the intellect is like a pair of hands. It's very useful. It can do all sorts of things. But it's not the boss. And the boss is down here, right down the solar plexus way, or the heart, around there. And that's the one that's in command. And that's the one which pushes you about to do things. And that's the one where nearly all the kilesas are, down there. And if you haven't got that developed, then the practice can be quite dangerous. For instance, you get in universities, you get young fellows who they slog hard at their work, they develop the intellect very highly, but they don't develop what's down below, the emotional side. And some of them, they're still emotional children, but intellectually they're sort of professors almost, and they're top heavy. And these people get emotions coming up, and they get into a lot of suffering and trouble, and some commit suicide. If, however, a person is well developed in the emotional regions, and the head is left to go itself, the person is a bit dull probably, but they're quite stable. In other words, stability comes from developing the emotional side. And in practice, the developing of that is really what we're doing when we practice samadhi. It's the developing of the emotional side. And it's very, very important. Because when the emotional side is well developed, one can take on the side of wisdom and do it safely. Because the danger with wisdom is somebody who's weak emotionally, if they break through and see something in the field of wisdom, it can push them off balance quite easily. They can't stand it. And it can be dangerous like that. But if one's emotionally balanced, then it doesn't matter. One can do anything. And this practice of the Samarang, it taught me about this region. But going on from that, I didn't understand it. It goes on to whole loads of stuff you have to sort of do. And I couldn't see any sense in it. I couldn't see how it was meant to work. Because of that, I didn't have confidence in it. And because of that, I turned and took up Anapanasati. And that brought good results. I went to a wat in Chonburi. It's a small wat. The abbot was named Lun Sumeto. And he's really quite a good man. And there, my practice always went well. I gained a lot there. It was very good. After that, the bhikkhu who was with me, who was a Jamaican, black Jamaican, and he went a bit mad. He walked out of a window thinking he could fly. He did strike down. Fortunately, the ground was soft. And then he was all sorts of things went wrong. I can't tell you it all now. It's so sort of bizarre. Anyway, the upshot of it was that we Kapilavatthu, we were under his sort of supervision, but he'd gone back to England. And when he heard there was sort of trouble, he came out again, and he decided we should all go back to England, so we did. And the English Sangha Trust was started off from that. And that's how it came about. But the practice then that I did was Anapana, and I kept the Anapana going. And the Anapana, it was good. It really did bring good results. The important thing is to keep the mind on the parikamma. That's the preparatory thing that uses the preparatory method. The parikamma means if it's the breathing, you've got to select a point somewhere up here, up in the nose, or on the upper lip. And you select that point where you feel it most strongly. And you must keep your attention at that point. When you breathe, you mustn't follow the breath out and in. Because if you follow it out and in, when you get calm, the calm will be going out and in also. So one has to keep it at that one point and know the breath passing that one point. Rather like if you go to the seaside and you watch the tide and there's a rock there and you can see it lapping back and forward past that rock. You keep your attention on the rock. It's like that. And if one does that, then one keeps it there, before long you'll get results from it. If you don't get results, it's almost certain that the trouble is distraction, other thoughts coming up. And thinking can be very, very subtle, and where you forget it quickly, but it's still going on. And you've got to overcome that before you can really get into a calm state. The calm state is valuable, and one should go on with the practice until you can develop the calm state quite easily. It should be something that you can almost go into it straight away. When you can do that, then the mind is well fitted to go in for wisdom. And you can turn and develop the wisdom from that. And wisdom means that you investigate, you look, you search, you think. When you do the samadhi practice, you try to stop thinking. When you do the wisdom, you've got to think. But not in the way you did before. You've got to think under control. And you think looking at usually the body to start with. And when you start with the body, you look at it externally, and then later internally, all over. There are many ways of doing it. You can even make up your own if you like. There's no fixed way. There are many ways, and one should pick something that suits one's own character. And when you do the wisdom practice like this, to start with, you will find it is mainly intellectual. You see the body from memory. You visualize the body, and that's all right. There's nothing wrong. This is sort of getting the preliminaries going. Once one's done that, then the time may come when you start getting some real insight. And the real insight is a realization of what you've seen with the intellect. The realization comes in the sense that you see part of the body, maybe it's an arm, and you feel that this is not me, it's not mine. It's just something apart from me altogether. And it's a sort of strange feeling when you know it's true, and you know it's unusual for you, and you know that it's sort of hitting home somewhere inside. This is the nature of the wisdom. One can't really describe it properly. You've just got to experience it. But it isn't just ordinary thinking, and it isn't ordinary speculation or discursive thought or analysis or something of that sort. It's none of those. It's just seeing in a different way. It's seeing with wisdom. And if you can do that, that is the aim of the practice. Because the aim of the practice is to destroy the kilesas. And to destroy the kilesas, you have to destroy the wanting, tanha, craving. And to destroy the wanting, you have to see what exactly one's attached to, because the wanting creates the attachment. The attachment depends on wanting. And if you see the attachments you've got, and you see them in this new light, you'll realize how empty they are. When you see them as empty, the desire for them tends to diminish, and in the end disappear. And the diminishing is automatic. You don't have to do anything. When you see them like that, the wisdom does its own work. And the tendency to want things, the tendency to crave for things, and the greed and hate that's involved in that, they all die away steadily. This is the aim of the practice. as they die away steadily, the kilesas get less. And because they get less, one feels lighter and more buoyant. One feels more free. And one knows it's good. And when you go on doing that enough, you're approaching the goal. That's the way of practice, as I understand it. Question?
When you did body contemplation, was there a certain part of the body that you were most interested in? How did you do body contemplation?
I used the general Kamatana Kesalu Manaka Danta Tacho through the 32 parts. If you would do that and you go through each part, trying to put it in mind, you can visualize it, you can locate it as a location, and you go through this, and the sort of regular way of doing it is you go through the parts, one after another, but if you find the one part catches your attention and your interest, you should stay with that part while you're interested. If the interest dies away, okay, you're gone with your rest, and you go on back and forward. Go forward and you go back, go forward and back. And when you keep on doing that, the interest in the body starts to arise. And it's that's important. When the interest arises, one starts eliminating some parts of the body which don't mean much to you. And you concentrate on the others. And eventually it'll probably come down to one part or one group, which is the most important for you. Typically bones, that sort of thing, comes up as a thing that's most important. Bones is often the one with people. Many people like that. But it doesn't have to be bones. Bones I found very effective. Bones in the joints and the way they move. And the seeing of, particularly the feet. It's almost so you can see every bone in it. You can see them moving when you walk. It's not seeing like seeing with your eye, but seeing with the mind. You can't look at it with your eyes, obviously. I mean, that's not practical.
You mentioned the importance of developing the emotional side.
Mm.
And usually we think of emotions in terms of like love and hate and hope and fear, resentment, things like that. Can you explain in more detail what you mean by developing the emotional side?
It's difficult to explain really, but if you watch and see when any of these things come up, love or hate or anger or whatever it is, and you look, where do they come from? They're all down here coming up all the time. And it's that area that's important. You can even see the words coming from there. Words coming, they come like bubbles in a glass of Pepsi. They come up, it's almost as though they come to the throat and they become actual words. And then they come up and they come up to the full concept. And it's from there that a lot of the tendencies of thinking and discursive thought come from. Anyway, that's my experience. Some people might see it differently, I'm not sure.
When you're talking about the emotional side, developing emotions, why do you not recommend focus on the abdomen, like the Burmese? Why do you say we have to focus on the nose?
Focusing on the breathing here is much easier for the breath, to get the breath. It's much easier to get calm. This down here is not so easy. But this point does suit some people. After all, if you want a point to focus on in breathing, this is also a point of breathing here, down in the diaphragm, because the diaphragm that's causing the breath there. And if one finds that's the right place for oneself, it's all right. But most people get better results up the top here. The thing is that when you focus here, when you do get the results are not kind of fixed up here at all. The results go to where they belong, wherever that is. In other words, if you try to keep your attention here, when you get the results, for example, one thing that can happen, some people get this, you find a point outside here, and you know that point, but you can't see it, it's not visible, you know it though. And then you realize that point is the same place as the heart. This is just an experience that some people can get.
Ajahn, with the contemplation of the body, when you're going through the 32 parts of the body, is that something you practice sitting, and both sitting and walking?
Yes, you can do it anytime, anywhere.
Anytime, anywhere.
Yes. And sometimes you get the best results when you're just walking and not specially thinking of anything. And suddenly gets into the right mode for that.
See, I find it seems to have more interest in it. When sitting, you tend to want to stay more in the peaceful state.
Yes.
So it's difficult to sort of get interest in contemplating the body, but I find walking, I can get more interest going in the contemplation.
Yes, if the sitting practice goes well, it's quite strong. Yeah.
And actual, even with walking meditation, actually using thought with the walking is better than just walking without thinking, just being mindful of the body without thinking. You'd recommend thinking be more stronger for cultivating wisdom?
If you're using the thought, it's almost certainly it's involved with wisdom practice. The trouble is here that different people have different experiences and different people have different characters. And what suits one person may not suit another. Mostly one has to do it very much as Ajahn explained. I've said before this. It's like somebody scrambling up a hill. You haven't got steps already made. You've just got to grab hold of branches and grass, bits of grass and all sorts of things to pull yourself up. It's rather like that. And when you're practicing, it's no good trying to go any sort of textbook way, because textbooks are just written for general characters, and most people are not general characters.
Is it necessary to focus on the ugly aspect of the different parts of the body, or just only like in the sutta when the Buddha says just look at the different kinds of grains in a bag, or different kinds of grains, but nothing about something ugly or repellent?
Oh, I don't know. I'd say that you've got to look at parts of the body, because the body is the one of the main points of grasping that we've got, main points of attachment. And the body is the first thing to really get at, because here you can see it. It's right here and you know it. Whereas if you try to get at any of the other khandhas, like feeling, memory, thought or consciousness, you find that these are subtle and they're slippery. They're not easy to catch hold of and see. Whereas the body, here it is. And so the general principle in Dhamma is always start with the gross first, and go work to the subtle. And the body is the grossest one of the khandhas.
Is it necessary to train oneself to see the body as ugly?
No. You want to see the body as it is. And if you think it's beautiful, so well and good, that's all right. But I think if you really look at it properly, you'll find that it is ugly. That's all. It's a mess. I mean, like you eat food, and you say, "Is this food beautiful or not?" And people say, "Oh, it's wonderful, you know." Okay, you eat it and you put it inside yourself. But supposing it was smeared on the outside of the body, would you like it? It's rather like that. The body, when you see the outside of it, it can be sort of washed clean and decorated, and all sorts of things can be done. But you look inside and it's not like that. There's no decoration inside. And I mean, we normally only just see the surface of bodies. If you doubt that, you should try and go and see an autopsy. But the idea of sort of trying to see the body as ugly is not right. You shouldn't try and see it as anything, you should look and see what it is. In fact, the only thing you should try to do is to get rid of the kilesas. That's the important thing. This is where one must try. But you can't try and go to nirvana, because you know how to get there. You don't know what it is. So because of that, it's no good. All you can do is try and get rid of those things which prevent you going to nirvana. And if you do that, it'll go automatically in that direction.
We are talking so often about the kilesas and the fighting the kilesas, and the kilesas are coming up, and it's just such a common word. Could you give a clear definition of the word kilesas?
Oh yes, it's very easy. They're greed, hate, delusion. That's it. And the delusion is the important one, because from delusion comes greed and hate. Greed and hate are the two active arms of the delusion. And the delusion is the false and wrong understandings we've got about nearly everything. You can see how this comes about quite easily. First of all, one has one's past karma, karma which is based on delusion. And then one comes to life, when one's very small, one's taught things, and the people teach you things when you're small like that, and you're in no position to criticize them or think about them. You accept completely. You swallow it all. And that becomes part of one's nature. But a lot of those things are quite false. And because of that, one's got all sorts of false things in one, which one's picked up at a time when one was unable to realize it and resist it. And then one's character becomes that. And when one's character is like that, one doesn't like to change it, because if one changes it, what happens to me? Where am I? I must change, and that's terrible. Or one thinks it is.
In a few weeks' time, the Sangha here will go down to Bangkok to an autopsy. Can you give some advice of how to best make use of the occasion?
Well, the best thing you can do is keep your eyes on it. Depends on the type of autopsy. I mean, There are different types. There's some where the corpse is still in pretty good condition. There's some when it's a real mess. And also you've got the sense of smells too. If the body is still in fairly good condition, there's not much smell to it at all. But if it's, as they call them, floaters, they're terrible. They talk about the floaters and the shrimps that have been nibbling at them.
Well, I've heard on the tape of advice of looking at thinking of a woman for a super practice, seeing the ugliness of the body. I've heard other Ajahns say only contemplate men. Like men should just contemplate male bodies. Would you have advice on this?
Well, try it and see what happens. You try it and see, does it increase raga tanha? If it increases raga tanha, don't do it. Do something else. Because people differ, and some people can look on the body of a woman and see it as loathsome. Others can't. And because of that, they must try and see what works for themselves. Ajahn said that he worked on his practice, and he saw the bodies of both men and women as being loathsome, and he got to a point where he didn't know whether he'd got to the state of anagamin, whether there was any trace of raga tanha left, because he couldn't find it. So he thought, well, I've got to check this. So he turned and he tried to think of the sensual side of women, and he thought to this, and he said, for 4 days he did it, and then he got raga tanha coming up, and he knew he hadn't got there yet. This was because he had gone so far with the practice that it was completely dead, raga tanha. There was nothing active. And he thought it had gone, but it hadn't. There was still some there. So you've got to go either way, depending on what you're doing. Depending on your own practice, depending on what you've found out about yourself. And you must keep a watch on yourself. And when you practice, you've got to do whatever practice you do, you've got to ask, is this really going in the right direction? Am I really developing with this?
Paul, you commented on reaching a calm state before you do these contemplations. What level of calm do you recommend?
If you can, Apana Samadhi. But that's not very easy. Now, mostly one will first get into a calm state where you forget the parikamma, it's gone automatically. It drops into this calm state, and there's a knowing there of the state, and it seems perfectly normal, but there's no thinking going on. And when it comes out, you sort of shake yourself, where have I been, sort of thing like that. This is a calm state, and it's a good state too, that. But it's a preliminary state. That's probably Kanika Samadhi, the momentary Samadhi or short Samadhi. And the one to be a bit wary of, though, is upachara, because in upachara all sorts of nimittas come up, all sorts of things happen. And there can be some danger there to people. It's best to avoid that until you know yourself well. and you know whatever comes up there can't do any harm. To avoid that, generally one must go on trying to get the practice deeper than that. Generally speaking, though, I'd say that with samadhi, it depends very much on the character, how much samadhi they need. A person who's got a lot of wisdom will need some samadhi, but not so much as the person who's got little wisdom. The person who's got little wisdom has to rely on the samadhi to set up the stage for wisdom very strongly. If they can do that, then they can develop well. But the person who has got a lot of wisdom doesn't need that. They can use the wisdom to deal with the kilesas straight away. Generally, I'd say that the one thing that's necessary is one must have a control of mind where the restless, discursive thoughts are cut out. If that can be cut out, then one can see whether one should go further with the samadhi or go more into the wisdom side of it. But so much of it is trying for oneself. You try and you see what happens. And if you find that the wisdom doesn't work very well, then you go back to some samadhi and do a bit more. Generally, I'd say people should be quite flexible in their practice. One can't be too sort of fixed and regular according to the books. What the books tell you is really just the bare bones. You have to put the flesh on it yourself.
Could you describe using the Parikama Buddha?
Yes, it's very simple really. You just, inside yourself, you just go on Buddha, 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 like that. And you keep it going. And if you go on keeping it going without stop, time will come before long when you get into samadhi. But usually what happens is the person does Buddha, 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 Buddha for a while, and some choice, important thought comes up, and immediately sort of jumps to that, and the person then goes thinking about this thought, oh, how important it is, and mind goes way off track. You probably find when you're doing practice that thoughts come up, and the ordinary thoughts you can reject quite easily. But then one comes up which is so important that you should think about just now, because you think that if I forget this, oh, it'll be very important. But after what one should say is, okay, if it's so important, when I come out of the practice, I'll look at it and see. If you do that, when you come out of the practice and look at it, you just wonder why you thought it was important. This is a trick of the kilesas. This is the way they work. They're so thoroughly deceitful. But if you can keep on with the Buddha practice, just keeping on at it all the time, you'll get results. There's no doubt.
Is it useful to coordinate it with the breathing?
You can if you want. You can do the breathing as a practice on its own, the anapana practice. You can do the anapana with Buddha to help, or you can do the Buddha on its own. There's nothing wrong with any of those. The important thing is though to see what results you get from it. Then do it, whatever it is. Some people have difficulty with the practice. They have difficulty making themselves do it. They want something to spur them on. And they try making a determination, but it doesn't always work. And the best way, I think, to spur oneself on is to think of the future. First of all, you can think in this world. If I had the choice, where would I be reborn in this world? Where is there a safe place? If you look rightly, you'll see there isn't one. There's no safe place. There's no sort of refuge in the world at all. If you think like that, then you think, well, okay, if I was born there, maybe born in that place, wherever it is, maybe it'd be better than any other. But still, it's not safe. And how do you know you're going to be born there anyway? How do you know what's going to happen when you die? When you die, your next birth, just depends on the grasping that comes up at the time of death. And that grasping is dependent on one's karma. And you think how much karma one's got, and how many places one's been in, and people one's known, things one's done, all sorts of things. Anything can come up. Because of that, the Ajahns always say they're not afraid of death, they're afraid of rebirth. Because that's the dangerous one. And if you think like that, then you think, well, surely in this case I must practice. You can use that to spur yourself on. Just think of your own future.
A common obstacle people face is a lack of confidence or faith in themselves that they can do the practice. Do you have any advice?
Of course, lack of faith in oneself is just purely kilesas. It's the nature of the kilesas. And a person who hasn't developed enough wisdom, the kilesas can push them in that direction quite easily. The only thing to do there is really to turn and look at the Buddha and the Ajahns, see what they did, to realize, although I may not have faith in myself, I can have faith in these people who've done it, and I can let them lead me on by their teaching. Lack of faith is quite common nowadays, I think particularly in the West, because people have chucked out Christianity, and they've also chucked out the baby with the bathwater, as the saying goes. Because there's quite a lot in Christianity that is very good. The faith of Christianity is very strong, but to some degree wrongly directed. They direct it in the wrong way. But that's no reason why we shouldn't develop faith. Faith is very, very important. Without faith, one has doubts everywhere. But the faith in Buddhism is not the faith which you just agree to have in a god or something of that sort. The faith in Buddhism is the acceptance of the word of the Buddha until such time as I see it for myself. In other words, it's a conditional faith. It's a faith which one has until one can say, I know. When you can say, I know, then there's no more need for trying to have faith, because it'll be there automatically. The thing is, if nirvana has been seen, even just once, and when I say seen, it's only a way of speaking. You don't actually see it. There's nothing to see. When nirvana is seen, then one knows it. Although one may not have anything to sort of say about it. You can't say, well, it was this or it was that. When a person knows it in that way, then they know that's something that I've already seen. It's already come. How can I lose faith in that? It's like you've been to a place and you've actually seen it and you know it's there. If other people tell you, oh no, it's not there, you know that they're talking nonsense. But if you haven't seen it, then you can have doubts. No questions.
Last night you were talking about emptiness. It's empty. Can you speak more about that?
Nirvana is emptiness. It's empty of all this that we know here. It's empty of samsara. In other words, the things we know about, the things we see, hear, smell, taste, touch, we look on as being things, as being objects of perception. But these objects of perception are all impermanent, changing the whole time. Change is the essence of existence. And existence, as we know it, means change. If there's no change, there's no existence. And all our senses work by change, changing the whole time like that. When there's changing of this sort, the objects we know, the things we know, they exist, but they're not real. They're not real because they're always changing, and there's no time you can say they're real. You can say, if you try to say, oh, it's this, it's immediately changed. And now, the emptiness means it's empty of all those things. All those things are fundamentally empty. Because there's nothing you can say, it's that, there. When we talk about things in the world, we say it's this or it's that. We're really giving a name to our own concepts. And our own concepts are really symbols. We have symbols for everything. I mean, what Nana chart? What is not what Nana chart? In your own minds, it's a sort of package. You can't know the whole of it. I mean, you don't know all the trees here, you don't know all the grass and whatever is here, all the bits and pieces of it you can't handle. So you make a package and you say, this is now what Nana chart. And this is the way we think. But when we think like this, the things we're dealing with outside are all changing. It's only that we keep this package in our memories. And we think it's not changing. But it has to be changing even in our memories, because they must work by change. And fundamental emptiness is all these things are fundamentally empty. There's no reality in them. The only reality is nirvana. But now nirvana there's no change there. Because that nirvana doesn't exist. It is not existence. It's gone beyond existence. Another thing about it, nirvana, because it doesn't change, it can't be something that you attain or you gain. Because the things that you attain and gain are all changing, they're all impermanent. That means to say nirvana must be part of one's character or in there already. Which is true, it is. Our true nature is nirvana. But the thing is, we're always looking in the other direction. And we're always doing things which contradict nirvana. Because of that we don't see it and we don't know it. We don't realize it. Or I'd say actually we know it perfectly well, but we don't recognize it. Because of the kilesas.
Can you tell something how we can handle when doubt arises about our way?
I know doubt can be very strong and difficult. The way of overcoming doubt is to see the cause and effect in life, in everything. To see it and see the cause and effect that's there in the Buddhist teaching. If you see the cause and effect, you can see this in a young child. As soon as it can talk, it asks, why like this, how like that, what's this? It's questions all the time. All those questions invoke cause and effect. Because that cause and effect is a very strong factor in the human thinking. And if you use cause and effect there to see the truth of the teaching of the Buddha, then you can at least say that, well, I can't see any foundation for my doubt. That doesn't mean to say that the doubt won't be there still. It'll be a feeling. And the thing you can do then is to look at that feeling. What is the feeling of doubt? And realize it isn't anything more than a feeling. I know that in some people the doubt is always there, and they have great difficulty in overcoming it. Finally, the only difficulty is to see for yourself what the truth is.
Did you say something about
Parameters. These are the factors which you try to perfect in yourself. Mainly they're talked of as being factors of the Buddha or something of that sort. The factors of the Buddha which he developed. As to developing them for oneself, it's good, of course, good to develop the parameters. But to get to the standard of the Buddha is another matter. I don't know, I think one, by the practice one does, and if one develops the practice, the Sila, Samadhi, Pañña, the three, the parameters, or some of them, will arise in oneself automatically. There's no need to try and specifically develop them. They'll be there automatically.
It's an interesting question, because in the training in Ajahn, they told us as a novice the important thing is to develop your parameters, because then you have a foundation, a basic for your meditation later. Which parameter do you think is the important one for develop during novice life?
Oh, really, all of them. Because there's quite a lot of interdependence between them. But certainly the Pañña parameter is very important. It's said in the books that the stage of Sotapanna is the stage of understanding. The other three stages are the stages of effort. In other words, the stage of Sotapanna is the one where you clearly, having seen Nibbana once like that, you know it, and you have no doubt about it, and you understand how it works, so to speak. After that, you know, I've got to work now. The rest of it is hard work. And you've got to use the effort to overcome the kilesas that are there. But which parameters are the most important for the novices, I don't know. It's a long time since I was a novice. I always used to rather think that all these parameters are too high for me. that I got to develop a lot of much more simple things first.
Could you talk a bit about the arousing of effort, how reflections one can use to make the
Arousing of effort. Yes, it is difficult. And the arousing of effort often means to turn from mental effort and use physical effort. In other words, instead of sitting and doing meditation practice, get out and walk. It often means something of that sort. And that can help. Because a lot of people find that if they sit and do meditation practice, they fall asleep. It's quite common, that. And they don't know how to put a forward effort. They don't know how to overcome that. If you get up and go out and walk, it'll help more. That's one thing that's quite important. But otherwise, the arousing of effort can come from increasing interest. Because of that, if one can get some success in the practice, it'll spur one on to, one's interest will increase, and it'll spur one on to do more practice and to put more effort into it. But first of all, I would say try the walking practice. That can stir up effort more than most things. When one gets into a state where one is lacking effort and one feels one can't sort of break through it, often you've got to find some method. You've got to look at yourself and find your own method. It depends on one's own character, what's necessary. But there are many different methods a person can use. I mean, they can. To give an example, I heard of one bhikkhu, I believe it was in Burma, and he always used to fall asleep in the practice. So he decided he was going to cure himself of this. So he got a plank of wood, and there was a well there, and he put it across the top, and he sat on that plank. And he knew that if he fell asleep, he'd go down. And so he had to be very careful about going asleep. And once or twice he practically fell, grabbed the plank and sort of scrambled back again. But in the end, he managed to overcome the tendency to sleep like that. He overcame it. I think it took him about 8 or 9 months to do. Some sit on the edge of a cliff. That's another one. Another one is, of course, some people go and sit where tigers walk, if you can find them. No. Not many left. One thing that can help with effort also is if one goes out into the open. If you're in a hut, it's sort of enclosed and one feels safe. But if you go out into the open and you've got nothing between you and everything else in the world, you don't feel so safe. And you feel that some sort of creepy crawly things are coming along and might sting you, or you don't know. And doing this can stir up a mindfulness which one never knew one had before.